Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I want to thank the Tawakkol Karman Foundation for the invitation, and I want to thank the organizers. I want to thank Tawakkol Karman and Ms. Al-Junaid and all the organizers. And I'm happy to be among here, among fellow citizens, Yemeni men and women, and all guests from across the region and internationally speaking. I want to take it from here forward, thinking about the future. First of all, when I read the title, Post-War, many of us were discussing, well, first we need to end the war in order to actually think about the future. But I think what توكل also mentioned in her introduction is that we need to come up with a strategy. We need to imagine the future of Yemen. We need to look forward. We need to stop talking about the past and about the history and to start thinking about creating solutions for what the Yemenis want. And I think that started with the Arab Spring. As you know, the Yemeni people came out in millions during the Arab Spring and the 2011. And the main demand was to establish a democracy. And this is exactly what we want going forward, is that the people who led the revolution peacefully, given that Yemenis have more weapons than its people, were able to come up with the most peaceful revolution during the Arab Spring. And so we need to capitalize on that. I think one of the most interesting things that happened right after the revolution is the national dialogue, where Yemenis from all walks of life were able to come together and discuss the future of Yemen, including all parties that were part of the war now, and also the people that were looking to establish a democracy. And I think that was a really important thing to capitalize on. The outcome of the national dialogue, that created a roadmap for Yemenis. And it's not perfect, that it's some flaws here and there, but I think this is what we need to come up with in terms of like what kind of system we want going forward. And so the scenarios that we're talking about here today are three. One, that would reward the war criminals right now that are fighting in Yemen some sort of power, and that's, I think, the vision of the UN and the international community when they're talking about bringing parties together. Basically, they bring in war lords together and able to control the country, but also at the same time that initiative is supported by whom? By the Saudi and UAE-led coalition. Then you have the other vision where we're talking about dividing the country between the southern separators backed by the UAE and Saudis and the Houthi militias backed by Iran. And the third scenario is what the Yemeni people wants. And I think we need to think about the Yemeni people wants, because the first scenario will be basically recycling war and violence, and we want to stop that. Yemenis want to put an end to stop the war and violence. So the only thing that we can come up with, if the international community is serious about helping the Yemeni people, is to establish a representative democracy, a system that is by the Yemenis, for the Yemenis, without any foreign or international interference in the political system in Yemen. And I think the roadmap is clear on the outcome of the national dialogue. And what we need from the past, and the reason why the revolution started, is just because the system in Yemen was completely centralized, with one man, one tribe control everything. And that's what led to the movement in the south, and what led to so many different grievances, even in Saada and elsewhere, because Yemeni people didn't have equal access to the system and to justice. And so we need to look forward and how to come up with a system that would actually be decentralized, would allow Yemenis to achieve their goals of, freedom of speech, a great constitution for all people, will everyone have an equal access to the system. And the only system that would work going forward to stop war, to stop violence, and to make sure Yemen is put on a path toward democracy is a federal system. And the federal system not based on what the outcome of the national dialogue. Remember, and the outcome of the national dialogue they divided the country among 6 regions, right? And those 6 regions were actually based on identity. Going back, naming the regions based on former kingdoms that were actually fighting each other. We need to go forward. We need a system. I think the best system for Yemen would be the system like the United States of America system, where we have a federal government and the local states that control their own autonomy and have access to exact power and the share of wealth. I think that's the only system that is going to work going forward. But if we keep talking about bringing people together without the dreams and aspirations of the Yemeni people, we only cycle in war. We only going back to the same exact thing. So the only system that going forward is a representative democracy. Yemenis is not going to let any militias or any group or any foreign interference control the country going forward. We might be in a war for a while, but at the end of the day, we know what happened back in the 60s. The Yemenis came together, even though there were some conferences what they called the Khamr Conference, the Harad Conference, and the Jeddah Conference, between the imamates and the Republicans that led the revolution. But we know at the end of the day, the Republicans went back to their people and led the revolution that end once and for all the imamate system. So now, going forward, is that we need to think about what the Yemenis want, not what the Saudis, the UAEs, or the international community. It has to be about the Yemenis and for the Yemenis. And the only thing that we need to do is to come up with a federal system that ensures each state have autonomy, has access to their own resources, and make sure that our local governments all across the country exactly like the US system. The US system works so perfectly, and I think it would work for the Yemeni people. Any other systems would only create more wars and more violence. And I'll stop it here, and I'm looking forward to a discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibraham Qatabi.